Bloodshot, the franchise that never was. I never heard of Bloodshot. I don't know what it is, but I'm kind of curious on why it failed. I assume this is probably a comic book. They try to turn into a movie series like Marvel because that's the intro looks like. But I'm just very curious on like how only I wouldn't say only, but mainly DC and Marvel were the ones that were able to successfully create. Well, not even successfully, but well, MCU was nice, but create like a comic book live action universe.
After the monster success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe back in the 2010s, it seemed like every studio was chomping at the bit for a cinematic universe of their own, and even
Yep.
better if it was superhero related. Some have had varying degrees of success and failure, from the DCEU to the Sony Spider-Man universe. But there's one superhero franchise that crashed and burned
Nigga, is that Dom?
before it even got off the ground, a universe based on the Valiant comic book characters. We only had one film installment that came way too late with 2020's Bloodshot,
They got Vin Diesel
which ended up
in
being
this
a
bitch.
critical and financial flop. But today, I want to take another look at this movie to explore its long road to the big screen, find out why it failed, and offer up some of my own thoughts on the film.
I'm not gonna lie, they got Vin Diesel playing the main actor. I like. Don't get me wrong, I like Vin Diesel, but yeah, I can see why the shit didn't pan out.
In case you didn't know, 2020's Bloodshot is based on the Valiant comic book character by the same name, which was created by Kevin Van Hook, Don Perlin, and Bob Layton back in 1992. There have been plans for a cinematic universe based on the Valiant comic book characters since 2005, when it was announced that they were partnering with Sony Pictures to produce 5 movies based on Bloodshot and the Harbinger comics. Shared cinematic comic book universes were on the rage back in 2015, so obviously this was trying to replicate the success of the MCU and somewhat success of the DCEU.
How? Wait, what? He said this movie came out 2020, right? But if they were trying to do it since 2005, how are they trying to? Yeah,
Partnering with Sony
the concept was there, but they were trying to recreate something that was
Pictures to
already.
produce
Yeah,
5 movies based on Bloodshot and the Harbinger comics. Shared cinematic comic book universes were on the rage back in 2015, so obviously this was trying to replicate the success of the MCU and
true.
somewhat success of the DCEU. For the sake of this video, we will call this the VCU. The VCU would
VCU.
be kickstarted by a Bloodshot movie that would eventually culminate in a crossover film called Harbinger Wars. This was a very ambitious plan, and Sony even had creatives attached for these films. Bloodshot was to be directed by David Leitch and Chad Stahelski, with a script written by Jeff Wadlow and Eric Heiserer. However, Leitch and Stahelski would leave the project soon after, and a new director was found
And that's where it went wrong.
with David S.F. Wilson, who would be making
Oh,
his feature film debut with the project, as he mostly worked in VFX up to this point.
oh, I feel like when it comes to superhero movies, especially if it's somebody's debut, that's gotta be like a two director job. Somebody's gotta be with him on that. Cause like not the inability that he can't make movies, because he does work in special effects, but it's the fact that he's trying to set up a multi-million franchise. It's kind of like putting yo seventh man or eighth man in a game and tell this nigga, hey, you gotta hit the game tying three. You know, it's like he could do it. It's just a lot of pressure to do it.
There would be more announcements of Valiant comic book adaptations in 2017, with a Quantum and Woody TV show being helmed by the Russo brothers, another show focusing on Shadow Man, and a movie based on Archer and Armstrong. However, it seemed like these 3 projects would be separate from the VCU Sony was creating, with Bloodshot and Harbinger. More news
Why?
would come in 2017, such as a lead actor who was being considered for Bloodshot. This was none other than my arch nemesis, alleged cult leader and sexual predator, Jared Leto.
Oh
Allegedly.
shit!
Luckily, this never happened, and Vin Diesel secured the
Like, he went for his head. He dropped a whole backstory on
considered
this
for
nigga, man.
Bloodshot.
He,
This
he
was
really
none
went at
other
it.
than my arch nemesis, alleged cult
Damn,
leader and sexual
damn,
predator, Jared Leto.
damn.
Allegedly. Luckily, this never
Allegedly.
happened, and Vin Diesel secured
Shit.
the role in early 2018. Soon after, more actors would be added to the cast, such as Aya Gonzalez as KT, Sam Heughan as Jimmy Dalton, Toby Kebbell as Martin Axe, and Michael Sheen as Dr. Emil Harding. Although a couple of months later, Sheen had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts, and he was replaced by Guy Pearce. Around this same time, more movies in the VCU would be announced by Sony, such as one based on the character of Faith Herbert, who was supposed to show up in
Yo, hold on. What type of story this is?
the Harbinger movie before she got her own film. There was also a Dr. Mirage project being developed over on the CW, but just like the other TV shows, this was seemingly separate from Sony's VCU. Principal photography
I don't know why though.
for Bloodshot would kick off in August of 2018, filming all over the world in Montreal, parts of Italy, Prague, Budapest, but it was mainly shot in Cape Town, South Africa. By the end of production, the budget was estimated to be right around $45 million. In a
Honestly, for a action movie, that's not a big budget whatsoever. Like there's like rom-coms and dramas for with a $45 million budget.
shocking turn of events, Sony decided to sell off the film rights to Harbinger and other Valiant comic characters to Paramount Pictures in 2019. So it seemed like after years of planning out this big interconnected film universe,
Like, they gave up.
Sony thought it wasn't worth it and dumped most of the properties, only really holding on to Bloodshot. But at the same time, it was announced that there was the possibility that they would still be in the same universe despite being at separate companies, since Neil H. Morwitz was producing both. Perhaps Sony was going for another sharing of the rights sort of situation like they had with Spider-Man in regards to the MCU and Disney. So just to recap, at this time in 2019, we had Sony owning Bloodshot, Paramount owning Harbinger, a Quantum and Woody series at TBS, and a Dr. Mirage series at the CW. Not to mention, we also had a Shadow Man and Archer and Armstrong series that were being developed in-house and then were to be shopped around. I'm sorry to be curt, but the VCU sounded like a clusterfuck. Somehow this plan
Yeah.
was worse than the DCEU or the Sony Spider-Man universe.
Oh man, don't get me started on the DCEU. Honestly, in my opinion, I wouldn't say visually and action wise, the movies weren't bad. It was just the color grading was the color grading was the same damn near through a lot of the movies. And I feel like it was Zach not really, I wouldn't say not understanding the characters, but you're portraying characters in ways that contradict what the characters been building since they first came out in original comics. You know, especially with Superman, it's like yeah, he still has quality traits of Superman, but it's like you're not making a Superman. I feel like it was more making a good version of a Viltrumite. Don't attack me for that though. I'm just saying.
And it would only go off the rails more from here. Bloodshot was initially scheduled to release on February 21st of 2020, before it was pushed back
Oh, unironically, February 21st. I'm trying to remember it. I think that's when COVID. No, that's not. That's when COVID first touched down in America, and I think March 13th was the exact date they shut everything down.
to March 13th of the same year. It scored an opening weekend gross of $9
I
million,
think
coming in second in the box office behind Pixar's Onward. Throughout
that
all
was
its box
2019.
office runs, it would make $12 million domestically and $27 million overseas for a total worldwide gross of $39 million. This obviously made it a box office flop and put the likelihood of the VCU into question, especially since the reviews ranged from mixed to mostly negative. The film currently holds a rotten 32% critic, but fresh
Hey, but the fans, I don't really understand what these mean. The Rotten Tomato and the popcorn, but from the looks of it, I think this is like the critics and this is fan rated. So it looks like the fans enjoyed it, but the critics didn't.
78% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Additionally, it would score a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, a 44% on Metacritic, and a 2.1 out of 5
Damn.
on Letterboxd. Not the worst response in the world, but also not the greatest to start a potential franchise on.
I feel like for certain ratings, it's like if a movie got rated like a 4, it's actually a good movie, but it's good because how bad it is. If it got rated a 5, that means it's like it's bad, but it's bearable. If a movie got rated a 2, obviously, you can't watch it. It's unbearable. But that's how I feel about like low ratings.
Surprisingly, a sequel was announced to be in development in November of 2020, with Vin Diesel confirming it soon after. But as of the time of this video, it has been nearly 6 years and we haven't got any notable
Boy,
updates
that shit
on
ain't
this
happening.
second film. although it also hasn't officially been cancelled either. Personally, I doubt it'll ever happen, but you never know. No property is ever truly dead in Hollywood. And as for the rest of the Valiant
True.
projects over at these other companies, we haven't seen any major developments either. And just like that, the VCU ended before it even started, joining the ranks of other infamous failed franchises like Universal's Dark Universe, Warner Bros. King Arthur Universe, or Sony's Dark Tower Universe. So now that we know the history of Bloodshot and the VCU as a whole,
I wonder why do these universes just fail when Marvel and DC were able to get it off? Like, is it like just malpractice, bad business like trades and signings, or is it like people are trying to get the capitalism or trying to take over too much too early, starting off the franchise? Like, obviously, I never watched it, but I feel like it has to be like the way they're writing it. They're writing it so it's kind of like jiggling keys, so people get hooked on it versus trying to make something that's iconic. You know, they want customers. It feels more. I don't know. I'm guessing this is more like a marketing thing than actual movies. Like the first movie feels like a marketing employee, so you can watch the other four that's coming out later. But you're not. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I think.
let's explore a few reasons why it may have failed financially. The pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. Let's explain this a little bit more. As mentioned before, the film debuted on March 13th of 2020. It was in theaters for just short of a week before most cinemas were closed down. It would
Yep.
only make $52,000 in its second week from 79 locations, most of which were drive-in theaters, which obviously had much looser restrictions. It would play in a few more theaters once COVID restrictions lightened up a few months later, but the damage was pretty much done at that point. Additionally,
Yeah.
it had already gone to video on demand on March 24th, which was just 2 weeks after its theatrical debut. All things
Yeah, I might have to check it out. It can't be that bad, right?
considered, it did do pretty well on home release, as over its first 3 days on home release, it was the most watched film on Amazon Prime and the fourth most
Oh,
on
it's on
iTunes.
Prime?
Now the
All right,
question
I
of whether
might
this
tap
film
in.
would have been a success if it came out at another time is up for debate. Personally, I do think it would have at least broke even if it weren't for
Never mind. That shit is $4 on Prime. Yeah, that is not worth $4. They still trying to make their money back.
the pandemic. After all, it did make most of that final $39 million gross from just 1 week in cinemas. And that 1 week in cinemas was already facing various restrictions from COVID before it became a big deal. We also have to consider that it had a very reasonable budget at just $45 million. That's pretty good for a superhero movie in a genre where they usually tally in the hundreds of millions.
No, no, though. Like the budget was cheap. I feel like that's on the cheaper side for what I'm seeing them trying to do. I feel like that's way on the cheaper side because there's literally rom-coms, raunchy comedy movies, and like drama thrillers and fucking soap operas that has a budget bigger than 45 million. So I feel like it's more on the like lower side for superhero action movie, especially for a first movie. I feel like it's on the lower side.
If it came out on the same day in 2019, I think it would have had a much stronger chance at
Oh, 100%. I think this definitely got because I never heard of this shit. This shit definitely got like shelved because of COVID, because like that was the main focus. But if it was a year earlier or 2 years later, definitely. Well, actually, 2 years later, not Superman, Spider Man, into No Way Home came out.
making a profit, and we might even see a sequel or two by now. But unfortunately, that is not the timeline we live in, and the version we have was killed by COVID. So now that we know why it failed, let me offer up some of my thoughts on the movie itself. But first, a quick recap of the plot for all of those who haven't seen this movie, which
All right,
means
talk to me.
spoilers ahead. The film follows
Talk to me.
Marine Ray Garrison. While on a break from work with his wife, they both get captured by some evil dude. He kills Ray's wife and then kills Ray. Ray then wakes up in a laboratory at a company called RST, where the scientist brought him back to life with these nanobots, which have replaced his bloodstream. Now his body heals itself, and he has super strength and all that good stuff, but he also doesn't have his memory. While there, he meets some other patients who also have these robotic enhancements, such as a girl named KT, who will be important later. Ray's memory quickly comes back to him, and he escapes to track down his wife's killer by using the nanobots, which have access to RST's database. He finds the evil guy, kills him, and the other patients bring him back to the facility. Here, he gets strapped down and his memory is wiped. Plot twist, that backstory we saw with his wife being killed was actually a simulation that RST implanted into his brain. They use Ray
Mm.
as an assassin by replacing his wife's killer in the simulation with whoever they need him to kill. While on one final mission to kill a past scientist at RST, he gets hit with an EM.
Low key, I'm not gonna lie, that's not it's fucked up, but story wise, that's not a bad idea. To get somebody to unwillingly 100% commit to like being your bounty hunter, you psychologically make them think they're getting revenge on somebody. So the person that you want gone, you make this person think, hey, this is the person that killed your loved one. Go get him. Go get we just helped you. Go get him. Uh, so far, this plot doesn't seem too bad, but this doesn't this being the start of a universe. I don't know.
EMP blast, which causes him to go offline from RST's servers. When he wakes up again, he meets the programmer who set off the EMP, called Wiggins, who tells him the truth of his backstory. And then, Ray goes off to find his wife. She's alive, but it turns out they divorced over 5 years ago. The other patients
Damn.
from RST hunt him down and bring him back in. However, KT is unhappy with RST and conspires with Wiggins to break Ray free from their control and destroy the company. Everyone punches each other for a bit, they kill the main evil scientist in charge at RST, and Ray gets an upgrade to the nanobots from Wiggins. The day is saved, and these three ride off into the sunset on their next adventure. The end.
So I feel like this movie, I wouldn't say it ended perfect, but it has an ending with no build up to something else for your universe, you know? Like obviously the goal was to stop the RT evil scientist. You completed that. You killed the I wouldn't say big bad, but you killed the main villain without trying to slowly introduce another villain for another character. Sort of like how Marvel does. You know, it's kind of like you just told like his origin story, which is like a lot of movies do the origin story, but it's kind of like you just close and shut it. You could open it, but you know, it's kind of like it's hard to
The
explain.
first 45 minutes of Bloodshot are extremely rough, and I had a hard time fighting off sleep while watching it. The characters were so basic, the story was so generic, and the dialogue sucked. And then
Mm.
we get that twist. That twist recontextualizes everything that we've seen, and it makes sense why the story we watched up to that point was so insanely basic. It's a story that the villains made up to feed Bloodshot to turn him into their perfect soldier. That twist really worked for me, and after this point, I actually started to enjoy some of the movie. I say some because the movie still has many, many flaws. I honestly didn't hate this movie as much as I thought I would, judging off the reviews. The main thing that upset me was that the whole time I kept thinking about how it could have been a much better movie. The actual story is pretty interesting, but the
Yeah, it sounds
execution fell
interesting.
short in so many departments. No hate for David Wilson, but you can definitely tell this is his directorial debut. I kept imagining how much better it.
Huh. That's what I'm scared of. If you don't know, I'm a future screenwriter and director. Like I want to pursue it, and that's like one thing I'm scared of is the day I finally get my big break. I get on set, and everybody has more experience than me. Everybody knows more than me. I'm low key, I'm not lost, but it's like it's hard to explain things to people. Now, I'm not very articulate with my words, and I'll make like my first movie, and this shit everybody's saying it's generic, it's boring, and it's ass, and you can tell it's my first. That's what I'm scared of.
Could have been with a more experienced creative at the helm. When you have one
See, like when people say shit like that, like, oh, oh, this could have been way better. We had somebody more creative making it. Ah,
or
that
two
hurts.
bad performances in a movie, you can usually blame it on the actor. But when every single performance is bad, even from actors that have done great stuff, you kinda have to blame it on the director. And that's unfortunately what I have to do with Bloodshot. Guy Pearce and Toby Kebbell have delivered some great performances before, but I thought they were extremely awkward in this movie and very inconsistent from scene to scene. And the same goes for Lamorne Morris. I haven't seen him in too much stuff before, but he's always been a solid supporting actor. But in this movie, I just could not stand his character. He's supposed to be this goofy, silly, wisecracking IT genius, but all of his humor totally fell flat and it was difficult to trudge through. Although for me, the worst spot is Vin Diesel as our lead. I think he has delivered some good performances in the past when working with talented directors, but for like the past 2 decades, he's been on total autopilot mode. This paired with an
Yeah.
inexperienced director helming this movie resulted
And that's one thing I will say about like John Cena. Out of all of these, like, and Batista, out of all these type of guys, the action movie war hero, the assassin, tough guy, Vin Diesel, The Rock, Jason Statham, like those type of people that always play the tough guy or like the strong emotional fighter or the war, like they play the same characters damn near in every movie, no matter what the movie is. It's like you gotta work on expanding your range. For 20 years, we seen you do not the same thing, but play the same version of the same character. That's what like John Cena, he's working on his range to do more, which makes when you see him, it's like, oh, we're not when you see John Cena, it's not, oh, we getting the same type of, it's a we don't know what he's playing. We don't know what he's doing.
in an extremely wooden lead performance. I just wish there was someone else leading this movie who was trying a bit harder, or at least someone who had some natural charisma. Like, imagine if they made this movie with the same script in the 80s or 90s with someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the lead role. And then, imagine
What does Bloodshot look like in the comics? Trying to see what does he even look like in the comics.
if it was directed
It
by
don't
someone
matter.
like John McTiernan, Tony Scott, or Paul Verhoeven. It would be a stone cold classic by now. I know me saying, if this movie was made by someone better, then it would be better, is a stupid observation, but what I'm trying to get at is that
Oh man, this got sucked out. Boy, that would hurt. It did. That would hurt my soul. And to everybody saying, "Oh, if this was made by somebody better, this would be a better movie." Oh my god.
the story had so much potential if it was in the proper hands. As for the action itself, it was kind of a letdown. Bloodshot is a character that can't die or get hurt, so that robs many of the action scenes of their stakes. It just boils down to him easily shooting and punching these dudes
Kind of like Luke Cage is a walking tank. But I'm not gonna lie, I do
with
fuck
no
with some of these
problem.
scenes.
Additionally, a lot of the big action scenes have some questionable visual effects
The
with
CGI.
our characters jumping around. It reminded me a lot of the action from 2003's Daredevil with the unnatural movements. But the choppy VFX weren't
That's that CW Flash
the
type
only
shit.
technical
Season
elements
3.
that stood out to me. The editing had some weird cuts and pacing at moments, and there was a lot of terrible ADR. For those unaware, ADR is dialogue that is added during post-production to replace audio that was unusable on set recording or to alter performances. So this means a lot of lines happen when we can't actually see our actors' faces, or they cut away to something else.
Let it go, Tibbs.
I'm behind you in 3, 2, get clear.
It is
Go, Tibbs.
That's weird because it's not even looking like he's talking to this nigga in the first place.
Behind you in 3,
It dead ass looked like he just stood there, stared at him, and then moved.
get clear.
It is extremely noticeable as these lines don't have the natural rhythm to the delivery since they have to fit a specific time frame from the footage they do have.
Bloody hell. You okay? Well, I'm not sure you should be getting up. Maybe we can...
Low key, this shit not even matching though. Like that's more on the sound mix. Like it dead ass sounds like a nigga in the studio was talking versus somebody who was actually there with him. Like
You okay? Well, I'm not sure you should be getting up. Maybe we can...
There is so much of it in this movie, and it
that shit didn't even sound like it was mixed right. Like it still sounded like he said that from a
broke my
microphone.
immersion every time it happened.
Dalton! What are you doing? Help me! Dalton!
I did say hang on.
At the
Oh my god.
end of the day, it's just a forgettable action movie. Not the worst thing in the world, but also not really good. Just below average. But I've said all I need to say, and it's time to wrap it up.
Conclusion.
2020's Bloodshot simply failed because it had one of the worst release dates in film history. Not only did it show up 10 years late to the interconnected superhero cinematic universe party, but it also dropped 1 week before the whole world shut down due to the pandemic. This resulted in the movie flopping and being forgotten about by much of the public, and as a result, we may never see the VCU in action. So that's the story of Bloodshot, yet another franchise that never was. But what are your thoughts on the film?
Uh, it's unfortunate, but like I said earlier, this definitely should have been for somebody with the goal, like a company with the goal to take a movie into a movie franchise. Like this one movie is supposed to be the start. This is supposed to be your catalyst. I feel like somebody making their debut shouldn't be making it alone, at least. They should have had somebody else with the experience directing with him side by side, kind of like how the first set of original directors was two people instead of just him by himself. But I feel like also the way the story ended kind of feels like a one-off movie, even though it could stretch to two, maybe three. But I don't really see how this plot can carry into a universe like they're trying to make it. And then them not connecting the TV shows to the movie, keeping them separate was also didn't help. But with that being said, that was Bloodshot. Franchise that never was. Let me know how y'all think about that down below. I'll see y'all later.
I'm not trying to score. Your heart's an open door. I got the key. I'm trying to keep composure and some more. I know you want some more. Oh, oh. Can your body hear me? Want you to feel me?